You know how we have these like 2 a.m. thoughts about what is life about? What is the meaning of life? I kind of do that a lot, and I was recently just thinking about this one memory from school, which is why I'm making this video in the first place. When I was in school, I had this one teacher give my class this assignment of like write an essay or say something about the Olympics. And me being me, I went home and I had this book called Tinkle, and I cut all the did you know parts of the book that had Olympics on it. I just went ahead, cut all those pieces, made a whole scrapbook, went to school the next day, and I explained everything to my teacher, and she threw that book in my face and she ripped it apart. And that made me think about why so many things that we chase, job titles, relationships, prestige, personality traits, all of them are actually one huge performance. Performances we've rehearsed so well that we've started to believe that that's the actual version of ourselves. Let me just say this up front. A lot of what you're doing right now, building a brand, chasing titles, or just trying to be good enough might actually be arbitrary. Not because it's meaningless, but because no one actually taught us the why behind why we do the things we do. Nobody taught us how to question them. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how we're told to follow life paths that we don't necessarily want to, but then we think it's going to impress people that we don't even like in the first place. By the end of this video, my goal is very simple. I want you to walk away being able to identify when you're performing for others and when you're not doing things for yourself, and how to actually start choosing for yourself, not the algorithm, not the people around you, not your resume, not your coworker, not your parents, nobody. We all grew up hearing or just internalizing this unwritten rule to measure our worth against the yardstick of others. Psychology calls this the social comparison theory. The idea that people determine their own social and personal values based on how they stack up against others. Studies show that over 10% of our thoughts involve comparing ourselves to others, like who's got the better job, who's got the better wife, who has more Instagram followers, who has the better husband, who has the better family. While sometimes motivating, it can also breed insecurity and dissatisfaction who you are as a person. Seeing a friend land a prestigious job or having an Instagram perfect life can actually trigger anxiousness, because to our brain it says they're doing better than you, you are falling behind, you're failing, but even though the goals we're chasing are actually arbitrary. Inherently, humans are social creatures, right? We are often like trying to belong somewhere. We're often trying to conform to a certain group of people, which means we are deeply sensitive to group pressure. A classic experiment by psychologist Solomon, I think I'm gonna butcher his name, Asch, demonstrated how strongly we feel the urge to conform. In Asch's study, people were asked to judge line lengths in a group of actors who intentionally gave wrong answers. Nearly 75% of participants conformed to the group's incorrect choice at least once, meaning they didn't even believe in it, but they thought other people were saying that, so I should probably be saying that too. This also kind of ties into confirmation bias. This tells you how many of us will actually go against our own beliefs just to make sure that we fit into a group. Think about how many times we've said yes to a career, to a person, to an event, to anything in life because we think that's how we get accepted. And neuroscientists at UCLA found that the brain regions lit up by eating chocolate or winning money also light up when a teen sees a large number of likes on their photos, particularly the nucleus accumbens, a key reward center. In other words, external validation gives you this constant dopamine hit that we don't necessarily need. And on the opposite side is rejection. And if you think about it, many of us don't want to get rejected, right? Because it actually creates a similar feeling to a physical pain. And it's not just me. An fMRI study showed that social rejection activates the same brain areas as physical pain, such as the anterior cingulate cortex. There's a reason I didn't take biochemistry. It's cool. Think about this from an evolutionary standpoint. Being ostracized from your community means that you're in an actual life or death scenario. So our brains don't know the difference between living in those times and living in this time, and it still treats disapproval as a threat. This is why a harsh comment, being left out, or being rejected can hurt. Literally. And to avoid that pain, we often bend ourselves to fit the standards of others, to make sure that we blend in, to make sure that we feel accepted so we never have to experience the pain. You know how they say if you hit snooze every single morning, you're doing this trade-off. You want to be that person, but it takes a little bit more to be that person. You would rather not be that person. You would rather succumb to be the person that you don't really want to be, but to be the person you want to be means to do the things you wouldn't normally do. I kind of always think about this. So many people want to stand out of the crowd, yet they will not do one thing different to stand out of the crowd. They always want to conform to what the group is thinking. They will never do something that will make them seem or stand out of the ordinary, but they still want to be extraordinary. How does that make sense? The trade-off for being yourself authentically and not conforming to anyone else's expectations or opinions is the pain you have of not being like anyone else. Number 2, identity is a performance. Sociologists have actually done a lot of research, and they've been observing this for a long time. And what we think is our quote-unquote identity is not really ours. It's just been given to us. We've picked up on things from others. We think if we do a certain thing a certain way, we look cool. If I do my hair a certain way, like this one actress, I look great. If I dress up the way every single girl on Instagram does, then I will also be admired by a lot of men. If I take a certain career path, it means that I'm one of the best people in the world. None of this is actually me. Being myself, again, means learning to be uncomfortable with who I really am and not conforming to what others want me to be. This impression management starts early and it permeates our entire lives. Think about how you are in a job interview versus how you are with your close friends. Honestly, so many of us wear masks. If you grew up being the student who scored the best grades, you would often want to be that person. This social media age, performative identity has only amplified. So many people do things they don't want to do because they think they should be doing it. So many people start a personal brand because they think that's the only way to get a job. So many people, I've talked about building a personal brand on my other YouTube channel called the 360 Degree Marketing Show. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. So many people think you have to start a YouTube channel to become famous. So many people think you have to do this and that to get the results that the other person got. That's not exactly how it works. You need to figure out the why behind the things you do, and if it does not tie back into your values. Also, again, you need to figure out if they are actually your values to begin with, and then start there, and then we'll go from there. People scroll through the highlight reels of someone else and who are, again, also probably being performative, and inevitably judge your own worth to theirs. And one study found that on days when young adults use social media more, they reported lower self-esteem and higher negative mood. And this trend is not like dipping anytime soon. We're only going up and up. And if you think about it, the more we keep doing this, the lower our self-esteem is going to be. I personally know a lot of people who are stuck in this image performance loop, and it's a very toxic one to be part of. Again, like I said, you cannot want to be different from others and try to fit in. It's just not. Make it make sense. Let me give you this example. I recently went to a bar, and for context, I don't usually go to bars. I'm not really a party person. I don't drink. I don't do anything. But this one person, I was drinking Shirley Temple, and I had this one girl come up to me and say, chug. And I had this pressure from her to actually chug the drink, and I ended up drinking it. Then I thought to myself, this is not something that I would normally do. I did this because of social pressure. I'm thinking, how many people do things they don't really want to do? For instance, scholar Judith Butler argued that even core aspects of who we are, like gender, are performatively constituted by repeated expressions and behaviors, which means there's no fixed underneath quality that makes us who we are. It's the repeated actions, the repeated practices, the repeated habits that make us who we are. And while her focus was on gender, this does apply in a broader sense to a lot of different things that we do in life. We often become the roles that we're playing, and sometimes it can feel really unsettling to deviate that even for a little bit. If you've always been the overachiever, the overgiver, the caring person, the supportive friend, it's very tough to kind of try to deviate from who people think you are and going back home to who you really are. I really notice this performative life choices that people make affect them mostly education, career, and marriage, relationships, love. And I want to talk about education and career because it just gets to me. From our young age, we're funneled through systems that tell us if you score this much, if you get this grade, if you are in this rank, if you are, if you do this, you get that achievement. And it's easy to start conflating these markers with your sense of worth. Back in school, I used to fail a lot, and I always had this constant feeling that I would feel that my peers and my teachers, the school was just disappointed in me because they wanted me to perform better, and I would just not give a lot of thought to that, and I would do the things that I felt joy doing. Psychologists have found that extrinsic rewards like prizes and high grades can undermine intrinsic motivation for a task. Think about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic is what rewards, prizes, status, accolades. And then if you think about intrinsic ones, like me, I wanted to make that scrapbook. I wanted to do this. That comes from my own satisfaction, my own desire to do things versus doing things because I think it's going to impress other people. They're going to think of me as this. It's kind of like asking for validation, right? In both sense, it is asking for validation. It's just coming from two different places. Education systems with their rankings, their competitiveness, their how success is defined in terms of those relative terms of, hey, you're 1% in this, you're 10% in that. And which this literally keeps us hooked to that one thing of, I want to be 1% of this. I want to be 5% of this. And we start performing for that role, for that title, rather than sitting and introspecting, do I even want to conform to their definition of 1%? And I know that realistically, it might be like, yeah, but we have to be that to get this job. Yeah, but we have to do that to pay our bills. I'm not saying it is not that. You can find different things that actually make you happy and then tie it to that goal. Not the other way around is what I'm saying. Because by the time we enter workspace, this external validation follows us there. It becomes like this compass that we use for validation. It's like this validation compass, and we might choose a job because it's high status. I have talked to so many of my friends who think people who are in AI right now are the big shots. They might have a good career ahead of them. They might have a big future, but you cannot just become an AI engineer because you think that's high paying and that's like the thing that everybody's doing and people will respect you. How about people respect you for who you are as a person rather than what job title you have? Sociologist Max Weber warned of the iron cage of modern work, a trap where people end up in careers governed by rational efficiency and social expectation, losing sight of their initial ideals. And by that, in simple terms, it's like this person who did everything right, got the grades, got the job, got the wife, got the kids, got the car, got the status, got everything, but still feels completely empty inside and will never probably even admit it to themselves. If they're lucky enough to admit it to themselves, they'll probably not do anything about it. It might be too late to do anything about it. People who make decisions that are performative, which means what looks good, rather than making decisions based on what makes them feel good and what makes them feel alive, what's authentic to them, it's often this huge contrast. Right? When you make decisions that you want to make because you think that's good for you versus when you make decisions you think others would like about you, others would appreciate, others would applaud, there is a huge difference in how you feel later down in life. And you only live for a few years. Why would you want to live for someone else? Do you think there isn't a psychological toll for all the misaligned goals that you have? Think again. Chasing goals that do not align with your true interests and values can come at a quite heavy cost. Anytime, and I've met a lot of people like this, anytime I meet someone who ties their, sense of worth, their self-esteem to extrinsic ones, meaning like if their motivation is extremely extrinsic, wealth, how people perceive them, what dress they're wearing, what car they have, what kind of people they can talk to. All of this often shows lower self-esteem versus people who I meet who are like, I don't give a shit. I am doing things that I love. I am being super nice to people. I'm setting really good boundaries. When I meet people like this, I'm in awe because that's the route I want to take. And it always often makes me think about how confident they are in their sense of worth, right? They know what they want and they're not afraid to go after it. And then another part that I really love about people like this is they are not afraid of being misjudged. They're not afraid of being wrong. They're not afraid to fail and learn. Versus the other side, I will never fail. I will always be successful. I am the great at what I do. I am super amazing at what I do. I will always be loved and adored and cherished by people. Two completely different paths. Which one of these people do you think is actually going to end up being happy in life? In psychology, self-discrepancy theory explains how mismatches between our different selves lead to emotional turmoil. There are three different versions of you. Your actual self, the exact person that you are, the ideal self, the person that you want to be, and the ought self, the person that you think others want you to be. If you let your life be controlled by the ought self, be governed by the ought self, I ought to be this person, that self, the further you go away from your ideal self. The more you operate from your actual self, the more closer you are to getting to your ideal self. This gap between who we truly want to be and what we feel we should do is this nagging sense of anxiety that we don't really have to experience. We see a lot of successful people, and most of them are actually grappling with this because they have this external view of the world that they've built, but they're not really that person. They get tired. And then we see, now it's actually changing a little bit because we see even like film stars coming out and saying, hey, you know what, this is who I am. If you don't want to accept me for who I am, fuck off. Great. I actually love that because that's how we're supposed to be. The more we try to conform to the society, the more we try to become who we're not supposed to be just to fit into the community, the more estranged we actually become. The more authentic we are, the more we try to understand each other. Because why are we all trying to make things easier when in fact life is about getting to know each other, getting to know oneself, getting to be safe, be loved, be cherished, just enjoying life. That is what life's about. So I've talked quite a bit. So what is the resolution to all of this? That's a good thing. Encouraging news is that humans have immense capacity to learn from our mistakes and change. We have this huge gift of being able to change ourselves whenever we want to. And the first step to redefining our lives is recognizing the arbitrariness of our performative decisions. Question the default scripts you have. Why am I choosing not to be a morning person? Why am I choosing to snooze the alarm? Why am I saying that I need X to do Y? Why am I making this career choice? Why do I believe? Why do I believe? Why do I believe? And whose approval am I seeking, and what do I truly value? Authenticity, as Brené Brown defines it, is a daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. And it's not a one-time shift. You cannot wake up one day and decide, blah, this is who I am. It's a repeated activity, right? You can wake up one day, set boundaries with your friends, and wake up the next day and feel absolutely shitty guilty about it. But what you do in that moment will define the next 5 years of your life. Everything in life, any good thing in life will be a very, very conscious choice. And as I'm speaking this, I've read multiple studies and papers on this, and I can tell you, for people who have lived their entire lives being performative, it's just you. Nobody's gonna know if this is you. The pivot to authenticity can feel extremely daunting. It's like moving out of a city that you grew up in and going to a new one. It's daunting, but it's necessary. The pivot that you really need to do, because it can also be profoundly liberating. Make intrinsic motivation and satisfaction the key part of your life. I'm not saying let go of the extrinsic one, but keep it to a minimal. To close, it's worth remembering that our lives are ours to define, not for anybody else to do that. It's not anybody else's job. And the reason I use the phrase everything we're doing is arbitrary is because that's just a sentence I told myself when I was watching this whole what will happen if the world ends video, and I was like, you know what, everything we're doing is arbitrary. So I thought that would be fitting for this video. So as Brené Brown gently puts it, let go of who you think you should be in order to be who you are. And in that act of letting go, we trade a performative one for an authentic self that we will feel really good about. This was a heavy topic to talk about, but that's all I had to say. I just want to say really quick, I have a newsletter called Context Switch where I blabber about stuff like this all the time. Go to arshakaran.com/newsletter, sign up now, and I'll see you every Monday.